They told us history is written by the winners, but what they never told us is that sometimes history is written by the liars. From ancient civilizations to modern times, some of the biggest events we believe today are not exactly what they seem. In fact, many facts we learned in school were carefully edited, manipulated, or completely fabricated to serve power, money, and control. And the scary part is, most people still believe these lies without ever questioning them. Let's start with one of the most famous lies in history. Napoleon Bonaparte was short. For centuries, Napoleon has been remembered as a small, angry man with a big ego. But the truth is, Napoleon was actually around 5 feet 6 or 7 inches tall, which was completely average for a Frenchman in the 1800s. The reason he was called short was because British propaganda wanted to make him look weak and ridiculous. They used different measurement systems and spread cartoons showing him as a tiny dictator. Over time, the lie became more famous than the truth, and today the word Napoleon complex exists because of a myth that was never real. Another massive lie that shaped the modern world is the idea that Christopher Columbus discovered America. The truth is, millions of people were already living in the Americas long before Columbus arrived in 1492. Native civilizations had advanced societies, cities, trade systems, and cultures. Columbus didn't discover anything, he invaded. What followed was slavery, violence, and the destruction of entire civilizations. But history books turned him into a hero because European powers wanted to justify colonization. So instead of calling it what it was, conquest, they called it discovery. Then there is the lie that the Great Wall of China is visible from space with the naked eye. Almost everyone has heard this at least once. It sounds impressive, but it's completely false. Astronauts have confirmed many times that the Great Wall cannot be seen from the moon and is barely visible even from low Earth orbit without special equipment. This myth became popular because teachers, books, and documentaries kept repeating it without ever checking real scientific evidence. It's a perfect example of how a lie becomes truth just because enough people say it. Now let's talk about a darker and more dangerous lie. The Titanic sank because it hit an iceberg. While the iceberg did cause the damage, many historians believe the real reason the tragedy was so deadly was human greed. The ship was traveling at high speed despite multiple iceberg warnings. The owners wanted headlines, records, and publicity. There were not enough lifeboats for everyone because they were considered unnecessary and ugly for the ship's design. The official story blames nature, but the hidden truth points to arrogance, profit, and negligence. Another powerful lie is the idea that Vikings wore horned helmets. Almost every movie, cartoon, and game shows Vikings with giant horns on their heads, but no real Viking helmet with horns has ever been found. This image was created in the 19th century by artists and opera designers who wanted to make Vikings look more dramatic and savage. Over time, the fake image became more popular than real history. Today, most people imagine a fantasy version of Vikings that never actually existed. And finally, one of the biggest modern lies is hard work alone guarantees success. This is one of the most dangerous lies ever told because it keeps millions of people blaming themselves instead of questioning the system. While hard work is important, success is also deeply connected to luck, timing, access, location, and opportunities. History is full of brilliant people who worked harder than anyone and still failed because they were born in the wrong place at the wrong time or without the right connections. But the lie continues because it benefits powerful systems that want people to stay quiet, obedient, and hopeful. These lies were not accidents. They were created, repeated, and protected for decades, sometimes centuries, not because they were true, but because they were useful. Useful for governments, empires, corporations, and ideologies. And the most shocking truth of all is this: if history has lied to us so many times before, how many lies are we still living in right now without even realizing it? One of the most repeated lies in modern history is that the pyramids were built by slaves. For years, movies and textbooks showed thousands of tortured slaves being forced to build the pyramids under whips and chains. But archaeological evidence tells a very different story. The workers were actually paid laborers who lived in organized villages, received food, medical care, and even proper burials near the pyramids. They were skilled engineers, builders, and craftsmen. The slave story became became popular because it fit a dramatic narrative and made ancient civilizations look more brutal than they really were. Another powerful lie is the idea that Einstein failed math in school. This story is often told to motivate students, but it's completely false. Albert Einstein was actually excellent at mathematics and physics from a very young age. He mastered advanced calculus before most students his age even understood basic algebra. The myth started because of a misunderstanding in grading systems and poor translations of old school records. The truth is, Einstein didn't become a genius by accident. He was brilliant long before the world noticed. Then there's the lie that the medieval period was the Dark Ages. We're told that after the fall of Rome, humanity entered a time of ignorance, stupidity, and no progress. But in reality, this period saw massive advancements in science, architecture, medicine, agriculture, and education. Universities were created, complex machines were invented, and important scientific knowledge was preserved and developed, especially in the Islamic world. Calling it the Dark Ages was mainly done by later Europeans who wanted to make themselves look more advanced by making the past look worse. Another shocking lie is that the first Thanksgiving was a peaceful celebration of friendship. The real story is far more disturbing. While there was a shared meal, it happened in the middle of colonization, land theft, and the destruction of Native American communities. Many tribes were later killed, displaced, or forced into terrible conditions. The Happy Thanksgiving story was simplified and cleaned up to create a patriotic national myth, hiding centuries of suffering behind a feel-good narrative. Now let's talk about a lie that still controls millions of minds today. You are completely free. We're told we live in the most free societies in history, but real freedom is often limited by money, debt, laws, algorithms, and social systems. Most people spend their lives working just to survive, controlled by economic pressure, digital surveillance, and invisible rules they never agreed to. The idea of total freedom is sold as a dream, while real power remains in the hands of a very small group. Another huge lie is wars are started for peace. Almost every war in history has been justified using words like freedom, security, or protection. But when you look deeper, most wars are driven by resources, land, oil, money, and political power. Soldiers are told they are fighting for noble causes, while leaders make decisions based on profit and influence. The language of peace is often used to hide the reality of greed. And one of the most dangerous lies of all, the media always tells the truth. Media is controlled by corporations, governments, advertisers, and political interests. What you see is often filtered, edited, and framed in a way that shapes how you think. Important stories are ignored, while small events are exaggerated. The truth is not always hidden. Sometimes it's just buried under noise, distractions, and entertainment. History is not just a record of what happened. It's a story told by those who had the power to speak the loudest. And the real question is not what lies existed in the past. The real question is, which lies are being written right now that future generations will one day call history?
One of the most widespread lies in human history is the story that Marie Antoinette said, "Let them eat cake." This phrase has been repeated for centuries as the ultimate example of royal indifference and arrogance. But there's no historical evidence that Marie Antoinette ever said it. The line was likely propaganda used by revolutionaries to turn the public against her and justify the French Revolution. Yet today, millions of people still believe it, showing how a single false quote can define a person's legacy for centuries. Another astonishing lie is the belief that Columbus proved the Earth was round. In reality, educated people in Europe already knew the Earth was round long before Columbus sailed in 1492. Ancient Greek scholars, medieval Islamic scientists, and early European navigators understood this fact. The myth was created later to make Columbus appear more heroic and revolutionary, turning him into a symbol of exploration while ignoring centuries of existing knowledge. Then there's the lie that Salem witches were burned at the stake. Popular movies and books often show accused witches being burned alive in Salem, Massachusetts. The truth is, most of the accused were hanged, and some died in prison. Burning at the stake was rare in colonial America. The exaggerated story persists because it's more dramatic and terrifying, illustrating how fiction often overshadows factual history. Another shocking lie is Thomas Edison invented the light
light bulb. While Edison improved the design and made it commercially viable, he did not invent it. The first practical electric light was created by several inventors, including Humphrey Davy, Warren de la Rue, and Joseph Swan, long before Edison's famous patent. Edison's name became linked to the light bulb through marketing, publicity, and rewriting of history, highlighting how fame often hides the truth of innovation. A more recent but equally powerful lie is that the Great Depression was caused by the 1929 stock market crash alone. The crash certainly triggered panic, but the economic collapse was the result of multiple factors: banking failures, poor policies, unequal wealth distribution, and global economic instability. Focusing only on the stock market crash simplifies the story and shifts blame away from systemic problems that could have been prevented. And perhaps the most subtle and dangerous lie of all is money equals security. From textbooks to movies, we are taught that earning and saving money guarantees safety and happiness. But history shows that wealth can vanish overnight during wars, depressions, hyperinflation, or corrupt regimes. The idea that money is absolute protection is a lie designed to keep people chasing it endlessly, often at the cost of freedom, health, and creativity. These lies are not just mistakes or myths, they are tools. They shape how societies think, who holds power, and which stories are remembered. And if we look closely, we'll see that every era has its own set of lies, carefully crafted and widely believed. The most frightening question is this: if history is full of lies, can we ever be sure what we know is real? Or are we living in a world built on centuries of deception? One of the most insidious lies ever told is the idea that slavery was a thing of the distant past. Many people think slavery ended long ago, confined to history books and black and white photographs. But the truth is, forms of slavery and forced labor still exist today, from human trafficking to debt bondage and exploitative labor in factories around the world. Ignoring this reality allows powerful institutions and governments to avoid accountability while perpetuating systems of oppression. History textbooks rarely connect the past to the present, making this lie even more dangerous. Another enduring myth is the belief that the American West was a land of heroic cowboys and noble pioneers. Hollywood taught us to admire gunslinging heroes taming the wild frontier, but the reality was far darker. Native Americans were systematically killed, displaced, and forced off their lands. Settlers often committed crimes, exploited workers, and fueled violent conflicts for profit. The romantic cowboy story is propaganda that glorified colonization and erased the suffering of millions, turning a brutal history into a Hollywood fairy tale. Then there's the lie that the Berlin Wall fell peacefully overnight, ending oppression in East Germany. While the wall's fall in 1889 is celebrated as a symbol of freedom, the truth is far more complex. East Germans had endured decades of surveillance, arrests, and oppression. The collapse of the wall was the result of intense protests, economic collapse, and political pressure, not a sudden act of goodwill. Simplifying it into a neat story erases the struggle, fear, and sacrifice that made freedom possible. A shocking but often overlooked lie is the claim that the Holocaust was universally acknowledged immediately after World War II. While the Holocaust is one of history's most documented atrocities, many survivors struggled for decades to be heard. Governments denied claims, newspapers ignored evidence, and anti-Semitic propaganda tried to erase the truth. The myth that everyone knew right away hides the uncomfortable fact that silence, denial, and complicity are part of how history is recorded and remembered. Another example is the lie that ancient people were ignorant or primitive. Movies and textbooks often portray early civilizations as barbaric and simple, but archaeological discoveries show advanced technology, mathematics, medicine, and astronomy. From the Antikythera mechanism in Greece to ancient Indian surgery, history is full of evidence that challenges the narrative of primitive pasts, yet the lie persists because portraying the past as backward makes modern societies feel superior, clever, and justified. Finally, one of the most psychological lies ever told is history is inevitable. We are conditioned to believe that wars, revolutions, economic collapses, and political shifts were destined to happen. But history is not inevitable. It is the result of human choices, mistakes, and sometimes lies. Believing in inevitability makes people passive, accepting injustice, inequality, and exploitation as natural, rather than questioning who benefits from the story being told. History is not a simple collection of dates and events. It is a battlefield of narratives, where lies are weapons and truth is often hidden or inconvenient. And every lie in history teaches us one thing: thing. The stories we are told are carefully chosen, not necessarily carefully true, and if we want to understand the world and our place in it, we must learn to question, to dig deeper, and to recognize that what we think we know might just be another lie.